and welcome to slide pack 19 of the financial modeling program. In this slide pack, we will talk about net present value, and specifically we'll talk about the NPV and XNPV formulas in Excel. So with that, I'm going to go into my Excel spreadsheet. And this should look familiar because it's the DCF valuation we did in an earlier slide pack on this company using a 14% discount rate, using the mid-period assumption, using a terminal value, and we'd come up with $101 million as the enterprise value. So now, why don't we try using the NPV formula, because I think a lot of financial modelers are not necessarily familiar, and in fact do not need to be familiar with the kinds of formulas that I have entered here. In fact, I've seen some very, very good, excellent financial modelers who are just a lot more comfortable with using formulas, financial formulas within Excel, and they work a lot quicker, and in general, because they use Excel's formulas, their work is relatively more error-free. So with that, why don't we try using the NPV formula? So equals NPV, and I open parentheses, and that's when Excel says, okay, the first piece of information your formula needs is the rate, which is 14%. And then next it says, give me the values. Now, if you remember, our values are in this section that I've highlighted in row 37, where it's the EBIT minus taxes plus DNA, which is what we are using as a simplified formula for our free cash flows. Like I said, the real formula is slightly more complicated, and we don't necessarily need to go into that here. But I've entered the values, and I'm going to close parentheses, and I press enter. Now it gives it to me in a format that is not very nice, so I'm going to use my format painter and do that. And 91.3 million is what Excel says the NPV value is of these cash flows at a discount rate of 14%. So now, why is that different from the 101 million that we calculated here? The reason simply is that Excel's NPV formula assumes that your cash flows occur at regular intervals of time. So either they occur every month, or they occur regularly every 3 months, or they occur every 6 months, or they occur every year. And it also wants the discount rate to sort of be tied in to the appropriate interval. So because we have cash flows that occur, the first one is at half a year, the next one is at a year and a half, and then the last one is after 4 years. So our periodicity of the cash flows is not entirely steady the way the NPV formula likes it. So this looks like it might be a bit of a problem here, but Excel thankfully has given us a workaround. They've given us something called the XNPV formula, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to type in fact, before I do that, so Excel's formula for format for the XNPV formula is that Excel wants to know a series of dates. They want to know when your first value, basically they want to know from what date you want the valuation to happen. So here we say we want the valuation as of the 1st of Jan 2011, which is why we have a date formula in this cell L53 here. And likewise, we've changed the dates. So the first cash flow of 13.3 million occurs, I've assumed, on the 1st of July 2011 using mid-period accounting. The second cash flow of 14.5 occurs on 7/1/2012, which is July 1st, 2012 using the American date system. The third one is July 1st, 2013. The fourth one is July 1st, 2014. And then finally, the terminal value is as of the 1st of Jan 2015. Then the other thing I've done here is I've assigned a value of 0 for the first cash flow, which basically says, look, this is the date as of which we want the valuation to happen. And then I have copied the free cash flows from the calculations that we did earlier And what you'll notice here is that my numbers are shifted over one column, and the reason for that is that I had to accommodate that first date of 1/1/2011. So now if we go and use Excel's XNPV formula, what we have is equals XNPV parentheses, and then the first thing it wants me to give it is the discount rate of 14%. The next thing the XNPV formula wants is the series of cash flows, which is here. And then the final thing it wants are the dates on which these cash flows occur. And so what you also observe here is that the dates have to match up with the cash flows. So these two arrays need to have the same size across. And I close parentheses and I press enter, and I don't like the formatting, so I use the format painter and I put it there. And so now if you look at the value, it says the enterprise value or the net present value of these cash flows is 101,038,308. So quite frankly, I'm actually very satisfied with that. What you will notice is that there is a difference that is in the thousands of dollars, roughly to the tune of about $7,000 between the earlier manual calculation that we did and the calculation that's done by Excel. And part of the reason for that is that a year typically has 365.25 days, and when you just assume that every cash flow takes place on the 1st of July, then there's a slight margin and a rounding error, as I want to call it, that happens here, which is why our numbers are slightly different. But broadly speaking, Excel's XNPV formula is actually good enough for enterprise value calculations in the DCF method. So what I want to reiterate here is that where we use mid-period discounting and where we've got a terminal value and where our cash flows do not have the same constant periodicity, we cannot use the NPV formula, but we have to use Excel's XNPV formula in our DCF calculations. So that was a quick overview of using Excel's formulas in your DCF calculations going forward. So with that, we'll stop here. Thank you so much.